Newsnight 2025 and Laila Cunningham from Reform getting away with much more than she would have been able to do a few years ago. And here's a little exchange she had with a young man on there. And this would have been in the news the next day if this would have happened in 2020. I've got no doubt about that.
Generally speaking, we know that Reform is operating with a populist strategy, which essentially to me translates as say the most popular thing, which is often the simplest thing to very nuanced debates, get people on side and then iron through the creases once it's already too late. Now, I would love to ask both of you about, especially you, Laila. So whenever I see you on screen, it's a very weaponized politics. It's about identifying an enemy. If we get X group out, then we will no longer have problems.
What enemy have I identified?
Okay, so talk to me about immigration. So when I have seen you talking about clips where we're hearing the word Ethiopians and racist, and we're tarring
you heard me say the word Ethiopian and racist?
Yes.
When did you hear me say that?
Rapists.
Rapists, yes, because there have been illegal migrants have been allowed into this country that have gone on to sexually assault girls.
Correct.
Do you condone that?
Why are we tarring the entire Ethiopians? We've just spent the top half of this...
Because it was... Hang on. I'm sorry. But when you allow people, unvetted men, into our country who you have no idea who their history is, and you put them in a town and village, and you subject them to young girls who are walking in the streets and they end up raping a girl or sexually assaulting a girl, of course I'm going to call it out.
Listen, why is it not enough?
Would you not think it's right to call it out?
Why is it not enough to say, let's take measures on immigration? The minute you start
We are taking measures on immigration.
The minute you start referencing specific groups, the association in people's minds is, if I encounter an Ethiopian, this is now the person we're talking about. We just spent the whole top of the show talking about Prince Andrew, and yet I've never heard you say abolish the royals. You can treat it as a case study. So what I'm saying to you is...
The royals are part of Britain. We are importing rapists and terrorists into this country through our open borders. You cannot deny that. How many rapes is too much for you to say it's not okay? How many rapes would you accept?
This is my question to you, right? We are talking about instances. We know that there are rapists in Britain, right? Already here. You've described them as homegrown rapists before. That is very different. The homegrown rapist, that's almost a juxtaposition. It doesn't make any sense as a term of condemnation, right?
Yes, of course it does. Any rapist is condemned by me. I was a criminal prosecutor and I'm a mother of daughters and I'm a woman myself. Of course they are. Don't put words into my mouth. But we have homegrown rapists. That does not excuse us importing more and putting them in towns and villages. I'm sorry, I'm not going to back down from that position, and I think you'll find most of the British public completely disagree with you. And if that certain rapist that I mentioned happened to be Ethiopian, then yes, I'm not going to shy away from saying that he was Ethiopian, because that's what happened with the Pakistani rape gangs. People didn't want to say where they were from, and it was they were proliferated.
Yes, but you're applying it to a wide group. When
no, I'm applying it to illegal migrants who are allowed into this country. That is not a wide group, that is a specific group.
But it's not all illegal migrants.
How do you know? Are they vetted? How do you know?
Because we know that we're talking about instances.
How do you know that every man crossing on that boat is not a rapist or a terrorist? We know that one was a convicted terrorist.
But just to be clear, you don't know.
No, I don't know, but I'm not going to give them the benefit of the doubt because they have thrown their passports, they've entered this country illegally, so I will treat them as criminals, yes.
Let me bring Alpha in here.
And on the substantive point, I believe that you can't really argue with that. It's a straightforward enough claim to make. Quite simply, that we have no idea who these people are. So therefore, the left's claim that these are upstanding members of our society, or going to be upstanding members of our society, is spurious, simply because we have no idea. Once these people are in the dinghy and they're crossing the channel, they dispose of their documentation in the channel as told to by the NGOs in Calais and in Greece where they arrive initially. And let's not forget that our illustrious Home Secretary used to do one of those jobs, and she would provide leaflets, water and clothing to these people and direct them on the best way to enter into the UK and other areas of Europe as they wanted. Now they're told, get rid of your documentation and tell this story when you get there, and the rest will be handled by the British taxpayer and the human rights lawyers on your behalf, so don't worry about anything. But the main thing is that you get rid of your documentation on the way over. And so the point that Laila was making there is unarguable. You cannot beat that argument, and it's straightforward enough. These people could well be our future scientists, technologists, engineers, architects, doctors, dentists. There could be all of these fabulous things for our society. There could also be straightforward economic migrants who are wanting to create a better life for themselves. But there could also be terrorists wanting to do harm to the people of this country and our democracy. And I think when we look back on this time in the future, we are going to look back with astonishment that for a period of time in our history, we allowed and in fact encouraged people to come into our country, and we didn't have any clue whatsoever who they were. We had no idea what they wanted out of this country. And as we saw recently with the man with the AK-47 tattooed on the front of his face, who was coming to kill Nigel Farage, who is a sitting member of our parliament. Once these people arrive in the UK, it's extremely difficult to get them out due to the ECHR rules that hamstring our government and anybody else that wants to get rid of these people. The AK-47 man was given 5 years. He'll be out in 18 months, and at that point his asylum application will continue. And at that stage, I think we've reached the level of ridiculous. Why should the British taxpayer have to pay for this criminal to come to our country and threaten our members of parliament for us to keep him at a cost probably around 100 grand for the next 18 to 24 months in our prison? Never mind the cost of his human rights lawyers once he leaves prison. Never mind the fact that if he gets to stay in this country, we'll also have to pay his benefits in year one when he gets let out of prison, which will total somewhere around the £40,000 mark. Our asylum system is completely broken, and I think the point that Laila was making there is completely unarguable. We simply have no idea who these people are, so why should we accept them? Thanks very much for your time.